All right, I'm going to kick us off for the sake of time, and especially because I want to leave enough. I want to leave enough room at the very end for some Q&A for anyone who is on the line. I know we've got a few folks who have joined us, and some people may join us late. So I want to kick us off first. I'm the executive director for Emerging Vets and Players. I've been with the organization for about 2.5 years at this point. It'll be 3 in October. And a little bit about like me, who I am. I came from the physical activity nonprofit mentor peer space for my last job at Uptuff Sports, and we had a program where we hired military veterans as sports coaches for underserved kids. And so, it's been like a joy and an honor to work with our 2 founders, Jay, Nate, our board, and all of our staff the last couple of years to make sure that this organization really thrives, right? And I think today is all about how did MVP go from survive to thrive, and I can't wait to tell that story to everyone who jumps on today and give you a quick overview of the of what we're going to talk about today. I'll give a quick overview of where we're at as an organization to all the supporters and donors who have given to us the last couple of years. We will move into some stories from some of our members. One of our member, Matt, Lindsey Berg, will jump on as well. She'll tell her story from an Olympian athlete side, and then we have Isaac and one of our trainers, Bryce, to talk about our trainers and our staff and how they're really incorporated in as a part of our culture here. And then we'll open it up for any Q&A at the end. And so that's pretty much the layout of today. And so thank you so much for everyone who has joined so far. So let's just kick it off. You should all see this beautiful picture of Denver, our program staff, hugging one of our LA members. And so I really what encapsulates MVP is sort of gripped in this hug, which I'm really excited to talk about. And it's more than just this workout that we do, and it's more than just the huddle, but it's about how do we create positive relationships in people's lives. And so with that, just a quick on the story. I don't have to tell you all exactly the story of how Jade and Nate had founded this organization, but super quick. Jay, being a former being an NFL insider, being really close to athletes in the athlete world for 20+ years in journalism, and Nate as a Green Beret and then also as a Seattle Seahawk, really saw the challenges that former professional athletes and combat veterans saw when coming from home, right? So, or to home, and that's everything in the transition that happens from career to civilian life, and those things that fall in the cracks, being connected to services at the VA, to the NFL, to the NBA. What are those resources that that you get as far as when transition happens? And so he saw that as a need, and we're talking about some personal conversations from friends that they served alongside or that they've witnessed they've actually lost because there wasn't the resources there to support this population. And so it's a little bit, I can't even tell the full story because both of our founders are such boisterous folks, and I hope that at one day you guys do get a chance to meet them because they're so fantastic. On our mission, I don't want to go over too much of our mission, but there it is. That it's combat vets. We're connecting them and giving them a new team after transition. And most recently, we have updated our mission statement to reflect that's around personal development. And I think that for us, why we've made this pivot in our mission statement is because it's encapsulating a little bit more about what we do instead of just the connection, that it's just so much more than that. And if you ever get a chance to experience our program, the opportunity to see that, the program is much more than just, again, a workout and a huddle, but it's about what goes on after the program and before the program. And then just a little bit on our the program itself. So just a breakdown for the folks who haven't seen the program, it is about a 30-minute workout or so in all of our locations. And right now our locations are Atlanta, Chicago, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and New York, with sites on hopefully Seattle and Dallas by the end of this year, which we'll talk about as far as what comes next for MVP. As far as the actual program, it's a 30-minute workout. What makes our workout so unique, and what I love to sort of just share the story quickly about our workout, is that it's not just any gym that we select for Emerging Vets and Players. We're very thoughtful and intentional about the gym partnerships we develop that host our program week to week. We want to see a place where, it's relatively unique, And it comes with like a really good culture. We're about to blend two cultures together. One is like the MVP culture, two is the gym culture, as we've seen, and Bryce will share a little bit today, our trainer in Vegas, that the culture of MVP sort of expands and meshes well with these gym cultures, because a lot of these members do end up coming back even outside of program to train with the trainers and kind of keep up their physical activity. And so the first is just around physical fitness. And the other thing around our trainers, which I just want to brag so much about our trainers, is that, again, like, we do have some of the best trainers out there, right? We're not going to a YMCA. We're not going to some of these other places that just don't fit our program model. We're going to people who can do adaptive sport, right? And so we do have folks in our program who do need some additional help because of maybe some physical disabilities. And then also this thing, what I love to call, which is the coaching radar. And I would argue that you can't get that from a test or like a 3-day training course in personal training. That a coaching radar is developed over time. And so a lot of our trainers have that coaching radar to really sense both the physical and emotional health of our people when they come in, how they work out, et cetera. And the last thing that makes our workouts unique is that they are centered around healing practices in the trauma-informed world. And so that's everything from, partner-led workouts, because we do want to make sure our members leave our program with a friend on hand, which would be really great, to just making sure that they feel like comfortable, confident, and competent when they leave. The worst is showing up at any gym space, as if you may have all maybe experienced yourself, where you leave feeling like, man, I didn't get those 10 push-ups in. It's not about how many you do, it's the fact that you've done it, right? And what have you accomplished within that 30 minutes? And so we want to give that back to the people who come through our program, which is why the workout's so great. And the workout also primes our members for the next thing, which is around peer support. And so how that really looks like is we call it the huddle, and it's an opportunity for our veterans and players to really share about the challenges and successes that's going on in their lives. It's very intentional that we do this with the workout that leads into the peer support. There's a lot of, and I don't want to bore everyone on this call about the brain science, but there is brain science in how physical activity helps calm your stress response. And so we get them calm back in their bodies, so that by the time we get into the peer support side of things, that we are having some more intentional conversations, shake off the jitters a little bit, really, and give the ability for our folks to open up and become vulnerable. And that's a lot of what we talk about, is how do we make sure that people feel comfortable and confident and vulnerable in our huddle. And so when we get to the huddle, there are conversations around, depression, suicide, anxiety, those really heavy mental health things, but some really exciting, just connections, whether it's serving, the communities, whether it's getting connected to resources finally, whether it's finally getting that new job or moving from maybe that shelter or supportive housing to your own apartment. And so what's so exciting is that we get to celebrate these things together, because these are small wins, which what we call at MVP, small wins and big wins, right? These small wins that lead to big wins. And the ultimate goal of the program that we really want to make sure is that every member leaves the program every single time feeling better than when they first came in. I mean, if you were at a 10 before coming in and you leave as a 10, it's still a win. But we love to see when people feel like a 2 and they come out as a 10. And we want to keep that stuff going. So that's a little bit about the program, which you guys have probably seen. Quick highlights on the numbers, and I want to highlight 2019. And so in 2019, we reached about 1,000 members in 4 of our locations. We did launch New York this year as our 5th location in March. We provided about 8,500 hours of program. What I really want to note on the programming is it doesn't actually count the countless hours that our staff do check-ins with everyone. And so this year, we're actually going to start tracking some of that stuff because this is actually a lower number than what we actually do as far as engagement goes with a lot of our members. We took a member satisfaction survey, which we want to do every single year, and 80% of our members gave us a high rating as far as programming goes. The member satisfaction survey is really important for us, so we can continually update and evolve our program to our members' needs. And the last 2, which are really exciting, which is where we're going to lead into 2020, is this new survey that we started doing in Chicago. And so Chicago became kind of our pilot program for surveying. And so we simply wanted to know what other improvements people are making in program. And so we asked Chicago members for a full year, taking some retrospective surveying. And we found 2 things that kind of rose to the top. 76% of our members report improving and talking openly about personal things, which I think is really important, as we identify that when folks do come in, you feel sort of like huddled and you feel nervous, right? But we really want people to sort of open up, become vulnerable, because we know that's when you can ask for help and get the resources you need. And then 100% of the members report agreeing that they gained more positive relationships since joining the MVP program. And I really want to note why we use the word positive relationships at MVP, because you can have negative relationships. And negative relationships look like folks who may kind of like pull you off into a different path. And what makes the military and the service and, serving on a football team or NBA team is that there's such positive culture there, and there's great mentors and great relationships. And that's something that gets lost in transition, right? You have this fantastic mentor that's been able to guide you, maybe someone in the service, and it doesn't matter, sort of who or where or when. And then when you lose that team and you lose that identity, you're also losing this mentorship. And so then you kind of get lost in, how do I actually build positive relationships in my life? Like, how do I make sure and identify that this person may be good for me and this person may not be the best for like my own emotional healing? And so I really pride, and we're really looking at positive relationships that we know within program we cultivate. So that's 2019 by the numbers. And then, what I want to talk about next is what's happening with COVID. And so, for us, the first thing we did with COVID is we did pivot the program, which I want to show a video here in a second. So our COVID-19 Impact really is a report that we gave out to our members, and we did a survey. So on March 27th, and please note that this is March 27th, this is early into COVID. March 15th is when the lockdowns and the safe at home stuff orders have just happened. So this is a very early on survey. And we asked our members in a very anonymous, safe survey is, what's going on in your lives and how is this impacting you? And we noted that 35% of people had already lost their jobs. 38% of our members had lost childcare support. 27% had financial obligation concerns. And so what we've noticed, first and foremost, is that continues to drastically increase during COVID. And I want to talk about that, why that's so important in MVP. And the fourth is that social isolation and mental health concerns have drastically increased. And why these things are so important is because MVP never used to address a lot of these things. We did through a lot of our connections from some of our programs or some of our partnerships, but a lot of this stuff comes and creeps into our program, and it has been exacerbated. And so whether someone was finally on their feet, they finally had that job, or maybe they felt comfortable and confident in their relationships at home, or maybe they finally got the paycheck or the salary that helped them get out of a tough financial spot, we're now seeing some stuff that's happening backwards with our programs or with our members. And the last really around COVID-19 Impact is not only just the compounded effects of what's happening in our program, but now across the country, what we're seeing in each of our cities is we're now chasing after the same resources as everyone else, who the 30+ million, Americans that are unemployed, the many other people who are facing challenges. And so, unfortunately, I would love to say that our policymakers are organized folks, and unfortunately they are not, and we're all sort of in response mode still. That also means that our member population who traditionally needed or had some challenges in getting connections, now it's even harder. And I really want to asterisk the fact of why it's harder too, is because even at some of these places we've had deep relationships with to refer our members to, they're shutting down, nonprofits are shutting down, services are drying up in the most critical time. And so it really is more challenging for us to make sure that we have those right people in place to give what we call the warm handoff. A very weird clinical term, but in this sense, a warm handoff generally just means that we've got someone on the inside of an organization who really will lend a hand to us and the people that we refer them to. And so, the final thing around this, if you haven't had a chance, but Bob Woodruff, one of our partners, did release a full report on the impact of the veteran population on COVID. And so what we're really seeing is that this impact has been exacerbated, and that MVP is having to, not traditionally, we didn't traditionally do these things, but we're having to fill some of these holes to ensure that our members don't roll down the hill, because we always want to make sure that they know that we have their back. But more importantly, most importantly, during a crisis that happens only maybe every 100 years, we want to be there for them. And so this survey really helped peel this back. And what it had us do as an organization is be able to access resources we traditionally weren't able to access. And by that, I mean, if it's United Way, Los Angeles, or a different kind of United Way that traditionally serves very critical populations, and we didn't fit within any of their pillars, their guidelines, because of the survey and because of our pivot, we've been able to fit within that and gain some new funding relationships, which is really exciting for us as we think about, what are some other people that we can pull into the table into our cause. So that's the COVID-19 Impact survey that we had. And then next is just our response. And so actually, if you give me a second, I would love to share a video because it's much better when it's just a video. So I think. Cool.
Hey, Jacob, you're supposed to have audio? You don't have audio.
Hey everyone. So Noelle told me that I don't have audio, so I'm really sorry about that as I made you guys go through some of the video. But I'll just share a little bit about, what exactly had happened during this time. And so, we pivoted pretty quickly with our staff. March 15th had happened. We were in New York City. We were actually, launching our New York location when COVID-19 was happening. And one thing when we pulled out of New York to make sure that all of us were safe, first and foremost as a staff and a program, is how can we continue to support the people that are in our program? And one thing we realized is that we wanted to go virtual pretty quickly. And so with the support of a lot of our staff, and I know that Noelle is here and has joined us, what's so important is that Noelle and many people that are on our team helped us get onto Zoom super, super quick. And we wanted to make sure it was seamless as possible. And so within, really 72 hours, we were able to pivot our program to go Zoom and go live. And really, this is like a 30-minute workout that we still do with our trainers. And then it's an hour, what we call, the huddle, and people still can open up. Of course, we had hiccups at the beginning, which I'm sure that people can attest to with, using Zoom. But now I'd say that we're like Zoom professionals. As we implement program every single week in all 5 of our locations. And one thing I really want to emphasize is what happened during this Zoom pivot. And what's happened during the Zoom pivot is we realized that that we actually, last year, as I showed in the numbers, we served 1,000 people in our 4 locations in 2019. In a month, we served 1,000 people. So we went from serving 1,000 people in 1 year to serving 1,000 people in 1 month. And so what we're talking about now is continuing our virtual services, but the drastic need of our program, which I'm both excited for and also, as an executive director, nervous for, and what we're thinking about the future and how we can make sure that we continue serving these people at a high quality level, knowing that we've opened the doors wide for many people to join our program and get a taste of it, right? That we continue that through, as we ease in from COVID-19 into in person and sort of beyond. And so we will plan to continue the virtual services, which we're really excited about, but I really want to highlight that because I think that it's crazy to think that serving 1,000 people in 1 year to 1,000 people in a month is just so intense. And so fortunately, technology has proven to be fantastic on our end. On the unfortunate side, it does mean that, like, when we think about going in person, we have to be strategic now and not wait. And I think that's the best part about the MVP team, is we've been able to pivot so quickly to act now and think about what does this look like in 3, 6, and 9 months, and how do we continue serving their members and the people in our program to the best of our abilities. So with that, that was our COVID pivot, and we continue to operate program, like I had said, every single day and every single location, every single week. Our staff still provide peer support services and referral services out to that. It's a little bit more challenging, as I'd mentioned earlier on, that there are resources drying up. And so our contacts that were maybe in this space or in the mental health space or whatever may not either exist, or the person is laid off. And so it's kind of driving us to work a little bit harder to find out who is in that space, that we can make sure that our members can be caught and get the right kinds of resources. And as you know, like, day by day, these resources change. And so how do we make sure we're staying on top of some of the stuff? So with that, I've talked a little bit too long, and I want to pause. And I want to move to one of our members, who's Matt Shepard. And so I want to cue Matt up a little bit as he shares a little bit of his story. And so with Matt, Matt and I have known each other for ever since I walked in the door at MVP in Los Angeles as executive director. Matt was there. And so Matt has had such an amazing journey as part of our program, and it really has become such an amazing person. And I would say that we're like one of the tools in Matt's toolkit. So I don't want to take all credit for Matt's journey, because I feel like Matt owns his journey. But I just want to cue up Matt. And Matt, so thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to spotlight you to bring you on. So Matt, tell us a little bit about how you found and a little bit about your background.
Okay, so I am a U.S. Navy veteran. I joined the Navy back in 1990. I got out of high school at 17, and I joined the Navy. I hit the ground.
Matt, can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, your mic. No.
Hear me better? Let me try to take this.
No, again.
How about now?
Oh,
yeah, much better. Thanks, Matt.
Okay. So, yeah, basically I joined the Navy at 17, hit the ground running. So basically when you join the service, you unlearn everything that you previously knew, and you're trained for the task at hand, and to help out your brothers and sisters beside you. So after I got out, basically, my world was turned upside down. One of those things that I'm grateful for that MVP is around now, I didn't have back then, but that transition back into the regular world and society, I just didn't have it. So needless to say, I had some issues and some problems transitioning, aside from just kind of just turning my back on the veteran community. It was basically right before I joined up with MVP, where I started opening back up and started to try to find those veteran resources. So basically, when I found out about MVP, it was through a member, and that member basically enticed me with the workout. He said, "Hey, I'm going to go to this gym. It's a group called Emerging Vets and Players, and we work out." And then he had me at workout. I didn't even let him say that we sit around and talk, but he had me at workout, and I was all in. So with that, I think it was my first session of just sitting around after a workout and and in the huddle and talking, I was listening to other members' stories, and immediately my walls just came down and I opened up and started sharing, because what one of the members was saying just felt like it was just like he was just tapping me on my shoulder and just pointing at me like, hey, you. And of course he wasn't, but that's the power of how when you share in the circle, it just hits you. It's it's unexplainable. It just feels like, the feeling of when you get the chills and there's like the back of the hairs on your neck. But so yeah, since then I've just continued to come back, and there wasn't really per se, like I said, besides the workout, I just wanted to work out, and going there and showing up and just knowing and feeling and being around these individuals and hearing their stories, it just fueled me to just do better and want to do more.
So Matt, tell us a little bit about what happened. So you found the program. I know that you, we were in a tight bind like before, and sort of like, where are you at now? And also, Matt, you never mentioned you were in the Navy. So he's one of our Navy veterans. We kind of forgot that. So Matt, tell us a little bit about, what some things were happening on the outside and sort of where you're at now.
Okay, so when I found out about MVP, prior to that, I was homeless. I was homeless for 3 years. I had just gotten to a transitional housing, which is basically a veterans homeless shelter. And, I was using the resources and the counseling from there, and paired up with, and like Jacob said, I don't just give the tools to, it's a toolbox, and I just take the tools from when I need them as I need them. But MVP has definitely gave me a bunch of tools throughout the circle, experiences, stories, lessons told in the circle is just some of those things that I've learned and utilized, how to transition into not just in the circle, but out of the circle. So let's see, about a year ago, I got out of the transitional housing. So I have my place. So that's a victory. And we do celebrate our wins. That's one of the things. It's a very fine line with a lot of people that have issues that come in and we share. And one of the major things is to celebrate our wins, because there's so many times that we have fallen and we'll beat ourselves up, and we need to lift ourselves up instead of tearing ourselves down. So the members, we try to pick the members up and remind them, look, that's a win. So those little wins, we try to be accountable, and we try to be proud of those.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, so much for sharing. And Matt underplays a lot of like who he is as a person, but honestly, if I had to explain Matt in our program, is that he is the person that reaches in the toolbox and takes every kind of tool out that he can really use, because we know that it's not just about like our program and what they can get used, but like Matt found Mission Continues. He found so many organizations and other people doing great things at MVP that it had him activate in different ways. And so we really want to try to cultivate this community where we're not against each other as a veteran organization or an athlete organization, right? We welcome all resources, because we know that our members need to build out their toolbox. And if MVP is the place they land and we give them an empty toolbox and they put one wrench in, and that's us, and then they start piling it in and they leave with so many more resources, it is a huge win for us. And we want to celebrate that because we know that we're one part of their journey. And so thanks, Matt, so much for sharing your story. I want to go to Lindsey, and Lindsey's been with our program, since the beginning, and I'll let her kind of share how her journey, how she got to MVP. She is a former U.S. Olympic athlete, and so we'll talk a little bit about the athlete side of things and how that impacts her community and where she comes from. But just want to intro Lindsey first. And Lindsey, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you made it to MVP.
Hi guys, like Jacob said, I'm Lindsey Burke. I'm a 3-time Olympian, 2-time silver medalist for indoor volleyball. And first of all, I want to thank Jacob for inviting me on this call, and thank everyone that's here and supporting MVP, because MVP would not be here without you guys and the support. And I'm so excited, like Jacob said, I've been here from the jump, and it's so exciting how much this program has grown. So a little bit how I got involved with MVP, other than just being an athlete. I'm actually Jay's partner at the gym, Unbreakable Performance. So I've been a part of MVP from the jump. And not only have I witnessed what MVP has done for all the members, but I've seen and felt what it has done for Jay, my partner. He is a completely different person from the time I started with him in Unbreakable to now being years in with MVP. And so I thank everyone personally for being a part of that as well, and allowing Jay to really build something that means so much to him and actually heal himself as well by being a part of MVP. So athletes like vets, we have a very difficult time transitioning into everyday life after they retire. I retired at 33, and all I did was play volleyball my whole life. I didn't really have another job before then. I maybe worked one summer. You don't really have an opportunity to work on other things than your sport. And so I experienced the hard transition. My teammates experienced it. Some are still experiencing it. Other athlete friends of mine, the same. And then you also hear about the higher profile cases, as well as NBA players and NFL players going broke and all of these different types of things dealing with mental health. But MVP really allowed me to have a community again. Like Matt said, it's really about community. You don't feel alone anymore when sometimes after an athlete retires, you're like, where's my team? I feel alone. This is really weird. Do I make other friends? How do I make other friends? I'm no longer with my teammates. And with MVP, you don't feel crazy that you're not comfortable in your skin in your new everyday life. And I think that's really huge for us to really feel comfortable and have the confidence in our own skin. And you have people to talk to that are going through the same things in MVP. You can actually save a life in MVP, as others might save yours as well if that's needed. And just so many lessons are learned, friendships are developed. The vulnerability that goes on is very incredible to hear and to feel. I know even for athletes, it's very tough for them to be vulnerable. They always think that, we have to be the tough ones, so we just got to push through. We don't necessarily can tell anybody if we're hurting, all of these things. And it's really incredible how MVP has created the huddle where everyone feels like they can be vulnerable, and what can be healed with that is just insane. So just as a vet and an athlete, the struggles are similar, and it's just an incredible program that has brought the two together. And I think both help each other. MVP provides resources that are very hard for athletes to find, especially as an Olympic athlete. The USOC has tried to do certain things, but they're never consistent and never continue to help us where we need it. They're really trying, but it's tough. I think that's also for non-Olympic athletes as well. And MVP also has just made a huge impact outside of not necessarily on only a Wednesday am I there and being impacted. How I'm being impacted outside is I just don't take anything for granted these days. By being surrounded by my brothers and sisters in MVP, you hear so many stories that you really just can't take things for granted. And every day I can walk confidently knowing that I have my brothers and sisters from MVP that have my back, which I think is really important in everyday life. And the last thing that has really helped me is through the stories of MVP. I've created my own company talking about stories of volleyball players to educate and inspire, so that MVP also gave me the confidence to do that and to share more stories of athletes to help younger athletes as well. So that's kind of my story with MVP and my personal story and where I am today. But really, it's such a blessing to be a part of it. I'm really honored to be an athlete ambassador for it. I do think it has, though, been tough to get other athletes involved. And Jacob and I have talked about this often, of this pride issue that athletes have. a pride issue of not wanting to talk about the struggles that they are going through when they're retired. Some don't retire on their own timeline. They're made to retire and they're not ready. And you know, sometimes you really have to be ready to do something like this and be a part of a community like this. So I've been trying, I wish more volleyball women were in the area because they are great. And we've gotten a couple in there, as Jacob and Matt maybe have met, Taiba and Nicole. And I wish more lived around the area. But I just think it's a great program. And I really think also by seeing Alden's growth as a human, I think everyone has followed that. There's so many other football players like that. And I hope Alden's experience with MVP inspires other football players and basketball players that have the same issues and have the same story to be involved, because I really think it changed his life. And it was so, it's just, I saw him from day one in MVP to now, and it's just an incredible change. So I really believe that this program is great, and I hope I can help continue to get more athletes involved.
Thanks, Lindsey, so much for that. I really appreciate it. And, you know, for people that don't know, I think the hardest challenge in the athlete space, as Lindsey sort of mentioned, is it's like kind of like suffering in silence, right? And so, you know, in the veteran population, we've had this like stigma around mental health for a really long time since Vietnam. But there's still been an underlying education piece around some sort of mental health, whether they want to receive it or not, that it's sort of there and floating. In the athlete world, it's been really shoved down. And some stats that some people on this call, I really believe should know that like a large portion of the U.S. Olympic athlete population is living in poverty. We don't know that. That's sort of like a dirty secret. And like, how are we as a country, as programs, like really supporting this population who feels like left behind? Not everyone is Michael Phelps. Not everyone can get a platform like him. Not everyone can be on a Wheeze box. And that is a very small population. And, you know, we've talked to Cammie Craig and we're doing an IG live series every single week. And Cammie Craig was a water polo Olympian. And Cammie and I are just simply talking about the other kinds of people, LeBron James in the world. Like, you've got some really successful folks who are coming through, and those people kind of overshadow the rest of the population, the athlete population, that are actually, you know, suffering in silence. And so when we think about stories like Alden, who just got signed by the Dallas Cowboys and is having his comeback, to stories of other former, you know, NFL players. And what's super exciting, and I really want to touch on this, that Lindsey highlighted, is the fact that we may be one of the only programs in the nation on the athlete side that you can have an NHL player talk about, you know, mental health, and then an Olympian on the other side of the program say, oh, I experienced the same kinds of things. And that's beautiful, because we have not done a great job in this country of connecting athlete populations with each other. I think it's really exciting to see these two, you know, an NHL player like walk a similar path as like an Olympian, and talk about some of the challenges they've experienced, because what that sort of like envelops a bit is that their ability to be able to come outside a program and relate and think, maybe I do have a similar sort of journey as some of the other professional athletes in the country, and maybe I can reach out to people I might know at the WNBA or other places I never thought about. You don't need to just be an NHL player to experience some of these things. And so we'll see things through like the Players Tribune, which Corey, an NHL player, actually released a great article yesterday on mental health. If you haven't had a chance, read that. And so we're sort of peeling back these layers one by one. But what's really exciting about the program is we're actually a little bit faster than that, and you can see it in real time. So thanks, Lindsey, so much for joining us and talking a little bit about from the athlete perspective. So I want to jump to our last like two guests, and I really want to highlight the fact that our program is you know, veterans in our population we serve. It is athletes we serve, but it's also our staff, and it's also our trainers. And why this is so important is this relationship between our staff and our trainers has become really, really deep. A lot of our trainers weren't really anticipating becoming so emotionally involved in program until they train a lot of our folks. And, because we're really looking for those people who have great coaching radars, like on the training side, and we're really looking at people who have empathy and can develop empathy with the people in our program, we're naturally falling into the space where we find these trainers who, want to go above and beyond. I mean, we've heard stories of some of our trainers hosting barbecues, like on the weekends for some of our members, or connecting them with resources when we didn't ask them. And it's simply because they just want to support and be a part of this community. To the final fact, and we'll talk a little bit with Bryce and Isaac today about how it's been emotionally healing for themselves, right? And we talk about the science around volunteering as being really supportive on the mental health side, but being a part of a greater community and a greater cause is so healing. And so I want to cue, Isaac, who's our Las Vegas program manager, and Isaac's been with us for, just as long as I have at this point, around 2+ years over in Vegas managing the program. And so I'm excited to sort of intro Isaac. So Isaac, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll move a little bit into Bryce and Bryce, our trainer in Las Vegas.
Cool. Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate the intro and stuff. Howdy, everyone. My name is Isaac Saldivar. I'm originally from Las Vegas, born and raised. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 18 years old, and then took off from there. It's joined infantry, deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan. I was fortunate enough to be able to lead Marines into combat on my second deployment as a squad leader. Unfortunately, though, I was injured in combat. I was hit with a couple IEDs, caused some traumatic brain injuries, issues stuff with my memory. As well as really exacerbated my ADHD as well. And then, had some physical issues as well to get over. Had to learn how to walk again, how to use my right arm again. Dealt with a lot of substance abuse on opioids and stuff. After 8 years in the Marine Corps, it was finally time to kind of get out for me. They gave me the choice to either change my job or get out, basically. They knew I wasn't able to physically perform anymore on the infantry level or requirements. And so I figured if I couldn't do what I signed up to do, then it was time for me to get out. So after I got out the Marine Corps, but struggled with a lot of the same stuff that I didn't deal with in the Marine Corps. Again, with the substance abuse on the opioids and stuff, led to divorce and then second separation. So now I'm a happy single father of 2 little girls, a 12 and a 7-year-old. So that's plenty fun. But after the Marine Corps, I just kind of fell in this rut where I wasn't doing anything. I didn't have a purpose. I was no longer leading anybody, and I lost a lot of my confidence and stuff. And was pushing away family and friends and stuff just because I was isolated. I was so emotionally numb and didn't know how to share what I was going through or experiencing. And so, luckily, I had attended a couple of different modalities, different kind of programs and stuff to help out, but nothing really seemed to kind of stick, or just didn't seem like it was ever enough. And I was fortunate one day I get a call from one of my seniors, and he tells me, to head down to Vegas or to check out this gym that's opening up in Vegas. And for me, I was just kind of like, well, nothing else is working, so I'll go. And physical fitness did play a huge part in my recovery and healing, still does. So I was just like, hey, figure I'd get some good training in there, and went in. And little did I know that I was going to fall in love with this program. So I kept coming back just because there was guys that served with me during the same time. And that alone was like, whoa, I'm not alone anymore. My unit took a lot of suicides as well as a lot of casualties during our deployment and following since then. So they actually grounded our unit and stuff. So after losing one of my good friends here, I felt super alone in Vegas, and MVP showed me that I wasn't that anymore. And so basically I just had a desire to be better and to not be this victim anymore, to not live my diagnosis. And so I just got in there to make a change, and kept coming back from there. And myself and Noel started connecting more. We found out we served together as well. So our relationship started growing out, and started volunteering myself and Noel for about a year. It's about the time that Jacob came on and stuff, and then luckily I was fortunate enough to get hired on as well. I had no idea that my story or my lived experiences weren't a negative thing, that they did have a purpose, and that I could share that with others so that they can get through whatever struggles they're going through. And by no means do I feel like I'm a guru or anything like that. But I truly feel that we don't need to be alone. We don't need to suffer what we're suffering alone. And that ultimately, I didn't want anyone to ever feel as low as I did when I was at my lowest. I had some suicide attempts as well. And so this gave me that purpose, that drive, that new identity. Something to serve something above myself, basically. And it's helped improve the quality of my life and my relationships with my daughters, with my family, friends. You know, I was able to kind of salvage some relationships, and since then, I've had a lot more relationships come from it. With Bryce, one of our trainers, Tim, and just a lot of so many of our members and stuff. And it's cool that I get to engage with Matt and stuff from another state, or members from other, from on the East Coast and stuff. So it's really fascinating to go from being very introverted and isolated, feeling alone, to all of a sudden, like, you have this massive squad behind you that truly does have your best interest at heart, and they want to see you succeed, and you want the same thing for them. And it's a great thing to see that the program works. Matt's a living, breathing example of it. And that we can impact people's lives in a positive way and help empower them so they can become strong, positive community leaders. And so, I could go on a lot about it.
Yeah. No, that's Isaac. That's perfect. Thanks so much for that. Really, you covered, from end to end exactly that. And one thing that we don't get the chance to do yet, in which we're doing more in MVP, is highlighting our staff's experiences, because with MVP, a lot of our staff do have some personal connections with the mission and the cause, which makes us a little bit unique. But also this idea that, maybe we can become the training wheels for someone like Isaac to sort of launch off in a 20-year career of how he's going to help the nonprofit community, specifically his own community, in the future. And I'm really excited about that, because part of my role as executive director at MVP is really developing our staff. And so I'm trying to bring as many kinds of resources to the staff that they can feel comfortable, confident, competent, and maybe take it elsewhere in the future. And so I'm really excited, because I know that Isaac and many of our other staff have embraced this so much as sort of growth opportunities in their own right. And I've been able and fortunate to watch them grow exponentially. And so, what we're really not seeing is we all focus a lot about our members' growth. We're not talking a lot about our staff growth, which, as you all know, in order to lead an organization, you need staff who are strong and confident and competent, and who can lead a lot of our members and connect them. And so we want to invest so much more into our staff, because we just know that that's such a sweet spot, and that they'll be able to support even more people who come through our program. So with that, I know Isaac's developed a really great relationship with Bryce. And so, I met Bryce, it was a year ago. We do an MVP staff training every year. And so something relatively unique with our program is that we value training and resources so much. And so we developed our own curriculum internally with some consultants to bring in some of the mental health aspect. And so a part of the training process is we want to make sure that not only our program staff get trained in this, but our trainers, because our trainers are a part of our program. And so we want to make sure that our trainers do get some sort of light mental health stuff. I don't think, Bryce, you probably learned much about mental health when you were probably training, but you did have a coaching radar, which maybe gave you the sense or the feeling. And so once you go through and you finally have the words to say what you've been feeling and connecting with the people that you've trained in the past, it becomes more exponentially greater. And so I just, Bryce, I want to welcome you on and just tell us a little bit about sort of your journey to MVP. You're at Extreme Couture in Las Vegas. You train at Randy's gym, sort of on the outside, but on the inside, you're one of our trainers in our program that you've been doing this for over a year at this point. So tell us a little bit about your journey to MVP, and then how's it made an impact in your life?
Hey guys, Bryce Harley. Sorry, always weird looking at myself. MMA fighter, jiu-jitsu black belt, and collegiate wrestler. I knew that MVP was for me and it was in the very first day. I know that almost sounds silly to say it, but my very first day that I was at MVP, it was the 1-year anniversary of one of our members who had started a suicide prevention foundation with his wife. And it was the 1-year anniversary of her actual suicide. And he went into the story, don't even want to get into too many details, but went into the story about his wife committing suicide and thinking that she was asleep next to him. He let her sleep in, and he came in that day, and I realized right in that moment that you don't ever know who you're going to save. You don't know who you're ever going to impact. And that veteran could have chose to stay home that day and, commit suicide, but instead he made a better decision, the best decision, and took himself out of that headspace, took him to a place where he felt it's not even just community. I've heard so many words that are the same thing, community, tribe, a place where you feel like you have some kind of ownership. He went to that place, and he got the love that he needed, and he got the support that he needed that day, and even just the ability to vent. How many athletes, especially myself included, that have been doing sports their whole entire life, how many times do you really get to even just talk about things? Someone tells you to do a task and it's like, okay, well, that's the task at hand, so just even having a place to have a voice, that was MVP. And I saw it that very first day that I was there, and I knew that it was something that I needed to be a part of. At that point, I was starting to slow down in my MMA career and such, and I was transitioning over into coaching. I had been coaching since I was 18, but being a more active coach at Extreme Couture, a world-renowned gym, and I was looking for more things, and MVP definitely was able to give me that. It even sounds a little silly, but you feel like Superman when you're one of these coaches that are in this position. When you walk in there, like, you can do no wrong. People think that, you're infallible and amazing, and it does feel amazing. I hate to say it that way, and it sounds weird, but it does so much for me to feel the warmth and the connection that I have with people, and just knowing how they view me, that even brings me up to another level. Superman can't be doing dumb stuff, off the clock. Superman can't be getting, in trouble. Superman can't be making bad decisions. It's given me a sense of accountability that I think most athletes and military people don't have at the end of their careers or after their careers. We have that accountability while we're in the game, while we're, deployed, whatever it is. But as soon as we're off the clock, some of us are wild people, and then to get another, just another sense of accountability through the program was so important for me, and even just like we were talking about going to these training exercises and such. For me, as the hype man of MVP, sometimes people just think it's a lot of energy, and it's a lot of caring and stuff like that, and it's just like sometimes the hype man, even though they're appreciated and such, they aren't necessarily viewed as the most technical person, and so to get those extra tools in my toolbox that I can now present myself in a better way, and it's not just the energetic hype man that's just going to bring you up and give you that good good workout, that good sweat. It's like, hey man, no, like I feel like some of my best moments are when I get to open up in the huddle and I get to talk about things. It's therapy for everybody that's there. Even other trainers that I've known, Tim Lane, world kickboxing champion. I've known him for a decade, and I never knew him like I did. It was maybe a couple months ago, right before the COVID hit and such, and he opened up about his life story, and just I never knew all that about him. And it's a person that I knew for a decade, and it took MVP for him to even feel comfortable, or even not even feel comfortable, but to be able to articulate himself and feel comfortable expressing his emotions. And here I am, a person that's known him forever, and I'm like, oh my God, like that was another powerful night. I really don't think that there was a dry eye in the room. When you hear these stories, it's more than a story. You're feeling the connection, you're hearing the connection. On our own, some of us just feel like maybe like a piece of string, out in the world. But as soon as we, get together, we're now a strong rope. I think everybody can attest for that. Anybody that's ever been to an MVP, whether it was a super emotional MVP or not, some of the MVPs are just going to be a lighthearted, tribal play. Adults forget how to play, and sometimes it's just like, hey, let's get a game of, tug of war going, or just something competitive where we can just and other times it will be those moments where you got to reach out and you got to grab someone's shoulder. It's such a versatile and important program, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bryce, for giving us a trainer's perspective on this, and really the importance of like why at MVP, our trainers mean so much to us that we both like tool them and invest in them as well. But you know, the people that they're training aren't their typical clients, right? So like, and we're not, they're not asking for, hey, I paid you $50 for this 1 hour session, you know, train me in being the ultimate fighter, right? Like they're coming with a different kind of reason. And I think that creates a special bond and a special relationship between the trainers and the folks in our program. And so when we're talking about being intentional about the kinds of trainers that train our people, we are extremely intentional, from both the, you know, what gym we go into and we partner with, to the culture, to the trainers that are part of our program, because essentially they become pieces of our own culture. We want them to always be an extension of our culture. So with that, we only have a few minutes left, but I do want to open the floor for any folks who are on the call who do want to ask questions. And so we'll give about 3 or 4 minutes for people who want to ask questions. And if you'd like to ask, feel free to come off mute and just ask us. Great. Well, if there's no questions, it means that I did my job. But most importantly, again, I won't go into like research and science, but I'm going to, that it takes about 12 seconds for people to ponder questions, and we hit the 12 seconds. So I feel like everyone is processed, but thank you everyone so much for joining us today. We will offer this recording out to anyone who wasn't able to make it today, but from Matt, Lindsey, Isaac, Bryce, thank you. You're a huge part of our organization and why we're able to do what we can do every single week. And so, you know, again, it's like supporters and donors who do drive our mission. And today was really just kind of getting a highlight of what we've done since COVID, even since 2019, catching up all of our donors, but most importantly, providing some emotional connection to the people that are in our program in which you fund every single day. And so thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today, and we'll have a great rest of your week.